market. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
51-0, Donnie.
Yeah.
Those numbers don't lie. Georgia, every time they rush for over 200 yards, that's dating back from 2017 against FCS and FBS opponents. They don't lose. The 2 years that they won back-to-back national championships, Year one, they rushed for over 208 times. Year two, when they beat TCU, that year they rushed for over 206 times.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on SportsGrid. It is Game Time Decisions. Happy to have you with us here on this Monday night. Kevin Walsh with you for the next 90 minutes as we get set for a big game to close out Week 3 in the NFL. If it's anything like what he saw this Sunday, it could get crazy. It's the Baltimore Ravens. It's the Detroit Lions. Two teams that consistently win. Well, they're both 1-1. One of these teams is going to be in a little unfamiliar territory, checking in under 500 through 3 weeks of football. And the Ravens check in as favorites, of course, because that is what you always see when the Baltimore Ravens are playing. I think they are still booked as the best team in football. We saw that Week 1 at Buffalo. Spoiler, you see it next week at Kansas City. The number has come down a tick, though. We saw 5.5s earlier in the week. We see now 4.5, more so everywhere. A loose 5 still sits out. The talk tonight for me, though, will focus quite a bit on your listed total, which started around 50.5, 51.5. This thing has climbed as high as 54.5. Lamar Jackson, a multi-time MVP, is off to a very hot start this season. Jared Goff, who was loosely in last year's MVP race, with a rough Week 1, followed that up with 5 touchdowns, over 80% completions, and 334 passing yards in Week number 2. This is going to be a really fun game to break down, and of course, we will be locked in on it. I alluded, though, to the chaos, and that chaos was not just on the field, but I am sure for many of you, it was on the bet slips. Probably the worst beat you will see this year. Rams plus 3.5. The Philadelphia Eagles blocking a second field goal. Even that doesn't do you in if you had the Rams. Just get it in the air, and it's fine. But if they block it, lay on it. Somebody. Well, Jordan Davis didn't lay on it. He brought it right up to the chest and then right into the end zone. A tough break for those who had the Rams. Again, one of the toughest that you will see. A win for Philly that I thought would shoot them back up to the top of the conference. In part because the team they share that spot with lost as 7.5-point favorites to the Cleveland Browns. A head-scratcher. Green Bay brutalizing survivor pools as they drop to the Cleveland Browns despite a 10-0 lead. with less than 6 minutes to go in this football game, with less than 4 minutes to go, in fact, in that football game. Perhaps this game, though, impacting the day-to-day gambler more than the future gambler. Because, again, Green Bay unmoved as top status in the NFC. Micah Parsons unmoved despite top stat right in the DPOY. I watched this game. No shade to Micah Parsons. He's not Myles Garrett. He's not Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett was incredible, and his team in Cleveland got a win. You had another blocked field goal for the Jets, and it looked like they were going to stun the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Instead, comeback Baker with a third in 3 weeks makes it 29-27, and that game ended up adding on to the other list of injuries that we saw. Mike Evans, though, basically, relatively speaking, gets out unscathed as he has an injured hamstring, will be out a week, maybe 2, maybe 3. It is not season-ending. Not season-ending for CeeDee Lamb, but Dallas now up against it after their defense was torched by the Bears and Lamb was injured early in that one. The Niners moved to 3-0, but DPOY contender, my pick on the race, Nick Bosa, now injured for the year. And these injuries mounting and these injuries impacting the divisional odds, the playoff odds, and a lot of things in between. So we will get to them all here tonight. Speaking of playoff races, divisions, my goodness, has anybody had their eye on Major League Baseball? I mean, where do we begin? Remember when the Tigers ran away with the AL Central? That's a 1-game lead. They've lost 6 in a row. Remember when the Astros, I said, were like the team to beat in the American League? Yeah, they just got swept at home by the Seattle Mariners. You know what that led to? The Mariners are now favorites in the American League, and Cal Raleigh is picked to win AL MVP next to Aaron Judge. Is there value? Should we be fading one direction or another? Now, for New York fans, if you're a Yank fan, you'd hate to see Judge lose an MVP. But listen, take them as they come. You could be a Mets fan. They've been in the playoffs almost every day of this season. Right now, they lose the tiebreaker to the Cincinnati Reds. The red-hot Cincinnati team has won 5 straight. And now the Mets are favored to miss the playoffs. Futures market still shorting the Mets numbers more so than Cincy numbers. Not necessarily because they think the Mets will be in, but they think it's because the Mets could do more damage, and all of that is fine, but it is all stacked up in an incredible way. There are 3 games on the baseball board tonight that we will get to as well. We will also talk to you about what we've seen in the WNBA, an upset from Indiana, a nice job by the Lynx holding serve against Phoenix, and the market movement that we have had within the WNBA. There's going to be a lot for us to focus on here tonight on this Monday night. Again, a lot of that is going to primarily be, of course, on Monday Night Football. We got a great group that's going to join us here on this show as well. A very important slot from Pro Football Doctor David Chow, as we will get the latest around CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, even some of the season enders, guys that could be, on their way back, different things of that nature. We'll have Rob Donaldson help us out with tonight's game, as well as a little bit of Major League Baseball. We've got our guy Tom Vecchio stomping in the mix as well. Matt Fontana with not just the Browns and their incredible upset and everything that led to that, but also the Guardians and their race. And it is an absolute treat to have all of them here, but I don't think any of them would mind me saying I would tell all 4 of them, take a beat if we could have Dave Sharapan on the show just one more time. If you did not see the news, unfortunately, Dave Sharapan passing away over the weekend was a fixture on this show and on this network and was a true friend in every sense of the word. It's when you lose someone, you'll go back through old tweets and texts, and the one thing that stands out for me as I read them is every single time Dave answered. Every single time. And that's who he was, because he loved this. He loved us. He loved you. Truly. He always showed up, right? Jersey and hat. I would don it tonight, but honestly, that's his thing. I got my BVB hat over to the side, and I won't take those moments for granted. I know that that's true for the guys in the back, and I hope that that's true for you at home. I hope that you had fun watching us have fun. Again, I scroll through it. The last time I think Dave and I got to do this was on the night of the NBA Finals, where I think we were doing a hypothetical Paul Skeens, Tariq Skubal. Would you make the total 5.5 or 6 on the night of the NBA Finals? And we're having a blast with it. And I will cherish every single one of those moments. I really will. And there, there's been moments. I sent him a text, and he actually was able to answer it. I was having an argument with our guy Chris in the back over preseason football betting splits versus baseball betting splits, and I was like, Dave will be able to solve that. Now we got to solve it ourselves, and we'll do the best that we can, but we will always, as we attempt to, remember the lessons learned and the fun that we had with Dave Sharapan, the sportsbook consigliere, the one and only, what a guy. What an absolute honor to call a friend. Dave, we miss you. We love you. We send our absolute best to all of his family and, of course, everybody who lost an incredible one in Dave Sharapan. You're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
51-0, Donnie.
Yeah.
Those numbers don't lie. Georgia, every time they rush for over 200 yards, that's dating back from 2017 against FCS and FBS opponents. They don't lose. The 2 years that they won back-to-back national championships, Year one, they rushed for over 208 times. Year two, when they beat TCU, that year they rushed for over 206 times.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today. Only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here on Game Time Decisions. I imagine you will forgive me if I'm a wreck for at least 15 minutes. I'll just say, just one more, if I may. With Dave, there's been so many of these serendipitous moments. And again, when you have a connection with someone, you relate them to yourself. I saw, everyone knows everything that he got to do with Matt Peralt. And Matt yesterday tweeted out, Pat Steelers. That's special. And I think that he was a special guy. And I know this is such a small thing, but Dave when I met one another when I was so young doing this, and I was one of the guys, like, if I'm betting an under, it's because someone hacked my account, and I'm not gonna bother. That it's over. And even still, he'd give me, like, you're betting under? You're betting under? And again, it's a small thing, but you know what? Tonight, Dave, I'm betting under. I'm going under again. Again and again and again, in fact, because this stupid game won't stop moving against me. And maybe I'm being stubborn, but I quite frankly find this total to be completely out of whack. Again, you look around the league, and you don't see totals this high. And we saw the Bears and the Cowboys game booked at 50.5. Went under, had its chances, obviously. Only 7 second-half points. Dallas didn't score. But we are 4 points taller than that listed total. I think while both offenses tonight are better than that of the Bears and the Cowboys, those are good offenses. But both defenses tonight in Baltimore and Detroit are universes better than that of Chicago and Dallas. For me, you get into the third week of the season, you start to wean off of some of your preseason priors a little bit. But I'll tell you, coming into the year, I thought these were two of the best defenses in football. Yes, Detroit included. I really believe that. This is a Detroit team with a healthy Aiden Hutchinson. I think all in all, we're gonna see a lot of progress from, even in the loss of Aaron Glenn with the Jets, which I'm not even trying to bag on the guy, but it's not like he's turned that into a defensive juggernaut, at least not through 3 weeks, right? And this Ravens defense, I know they got torched in week number 1 by Josh Allen. 1, that's Josh Allen. 2, the fumbles helped. Buffalo gets to kind of play 4-down football. It was all late. This Ravens defense was pretty dominant, I thought, against the Browns. I know some of the final numbers may not say that, but they were turning them over, and they were setting themselves up in good positions. I believe that they were. And I also think it's just an opportunity to fade. Listen, if you want to fade an offense riding high, right? You may play a team total. Rarely do you get two teams that are going to likely be off of their high marks of the year. What do I mean by that? Baltimore's played 2 games. They've scored 40 in both. Baltimore all of last season, we know how good Lamar was, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. They only had 3 games with 40 points. Like, it's on the board. They don't score 40 again this season. That's on the board. You go back to the other times that Lamar scored 40 in back-to-back weeks in a season. Happened in 2019, the MVP year. They scored 20 the next week, bang under. Then this next season, they did it again. 27 the next week, in an under. Right? And you might say, but now they're playing Detroit. Well, again, Detroit's just coming off a game where they scored 50. They scored 50 twice last year. The next week, both games, bang unders, and the Lions scored 24 in each of them. So 27-24, what's that? Well under. In fact, of this new 54.5, you got a field goal of room on that listed total. Now, I will tell you this, because I know that not every book has 54.5. Some have 54, some have 53.5. No gimmicks. I've bet each and every one of those numbers. I got in today, 53.5, because I knew that this started at 51. I thought, that's probably top of the market. Let's play it. Goes to 54. Usually I'd be like, you know what? It's a half point, not going to make the difference. But I really did like this under. I said, you know what? I'll play it again. Leave it. It goes to 54.5. I said, you know what? We're too far gone. We're in. We're under. We're under the number. 54.5, 54, and 53.5. They're all my best bet. This game, 53 or less tonight. That is what we are rooting in. What about our boys in the back? What do they give us tonight for some GTD crew best bets? Well, our guy, Casino Chris, gets Derrick Henry into the end zone. Really disappointed not getting there last week against the Browns. And then Jameson Williams for 40-plus yards. Sam has a Derrick Henry long rush prop tonight. 17.5. I don't mind the bounce back Henry looks as Derrick Henry in that game against the Browns, 11 of 23, no score. That's one of his worst performances since joining Baltimore. AJ, never going to leave that baseball diamond ignored, takes the under in Brewers-Padres. That number checks in at a 7. We have a number of different ways you can play this props market tonight. I am sure many will be looking to back Derrick Henry, Jahmyr Gibbs. Who knows? You want some Amon-Ra St. Brown. You want some Lamar Jackson. The one thing I will add on top of the under is if you like that with me, okay, you can still bet guys to have big nights, okay? I'll just under with a couple of chalky touchdowns and Henry and Gibbs gets you plus 625. Gives you an idea. But I'm sure they're in the back saying, hey, leave the parlays to us. Fair enough. Chris is going to go with a Gibbs anytime touchdown. Sam is going to go to the under 54.5. And AJ's got a Rashad Bateman 2.5 receptions. That's a plus 575 for your primetime producer parlay. And that's kind of exactly what I'm getting at there. If you like this under tonight, you can still bet on some of those props that you love and find yourself getting some big time tickets. We're going to hit a break here, okay? But when we get back, we are going to dive into tonight's Major League Baseball board and the wild market movement that is. We are with you here. It's Game Time Decisions live on SportsGrid.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
You're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
They have Boise State, they have Arkansas, they have USC. There's no shot in Purdue. Those are the only big games that they have the rest of the way. They're not getting back into the college football playoff. They're not, Donnie. I don't care if they've won 10 straight.
Remember when they lost to NIU? No way, no care. What happens the rest of the season? They can't get in. Who was in the college football championship last year?
But they had
Notre
marquee
Dame.
wins at some point
I don't
last
care. They
year.
lost to NIU.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
I needed a mental break when the season was over. Because it's a lot. It's a lot. You get tired of training. But, man, I never get tired of playing golf. I love it. I mean, every course is different. Every day is different. And some days you're like, oh, I got this. I got it. Then you go out there and shoot a 95 the next day. Like, damn.
The Smiley Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today. Only on SportsGrid.
I know yesterday, NFL chaos, right? The bettor was beaten up if you were on the wrong side of it. And we're going to talk to, we're going to talk to a lot of people about a lot of things. A little bit like against my normal nature, though, I feel like we got to do a little like in case you missed it, Major League Baseball. Because if you're dialed on this NFL board, if you're dialed on this college football, all right, we got a new Heisman Trophy favorite. We got so much for you that we're going to hit, throughout the week here on this show, okay? But, all right, let's start here. The Seattle Mariners are the favorites to win the American League. That's new. They're now plus 210 to win the AL. And you might think there's no way. The Mariners have the biggest division lead in the American League. How is that possible? They just played a series in Houston where those two teams entered with the same record. They pull off the sweep. They have a 3-game lead, obviously now own the tiebreaker, and that lead is bigger than the rest of the other division leaders within the AL. So you now get Cal Raleigh sitting side by side with Aaron Judge as it pertains to AL MVP. And I think this is a fascinating one where if Cal Raleigh can get to 60, if Cal Raleigh can get to, 63, that may be all she wrote. He's obviously had himself a fantastic season, Cal Raleigh. He's just not been as good as Aaron Judge. Now, nobody has. Aaron Judge has been the best player in baseball. If there was only one MVP you could give out this year, it should go to Aaron Judge. But the narratives and the voter fatigue and I think the appreciation of the one-off nature of Cal Raleigh, because I don't think people are going to be betting Cal Raleigh or expecting Cal Raleigh to ever rip off another MVP, gives him a real chance. And there's a very difference. I think this is very important for everyone to understand. Now, Kev, if you're so sure that Aaron Judge deserves MVP, why don't you bet it? Well, am I handing out the award? Is it up? Well, then I will. If I can decide who gets MVP, I'll certainly bet who gets MVP. I don't, though. And Cal Raleigh is clearly in the mix. And I wonder is the difference here going to be less about these two guys and their numbers and now more about where these two teams finish? Whether that be who has the better record, who wins the division, I'm not sure. Judge still has that 50 benchmark to clear one away. He will. Cal Raleigh at 58 will be looking to get to 60 and then maybe get to 62, 63. I think that all becomes very, very interesting. In the National League, and I don't like doing this, and this is legitimate, and people will call me ridiculous, but despite being a Yankee fan, okay, and having money on the Cincinnati Reds to win the World Series, I'm not happy to see the Mets falling apart. I like this Mets team. I've been interested in Mets futures. Now, I don't have any of those, luckily, as this team is now not in control of their own destiny. The Mets still a game up on Arizona and 3 on the Giants. Probably, not definitely, probably only have to worry about Cincinnati. The market certainly suggests they only have to worry about Cincinnati. Arizona is like 10-1 to make the playoffs. They don't even have the San Francisco Giants numbers, okay? The Mets and the Reds. Well, the Reds play Pittsburgh for 3, and then they go to Milwaukee for 3. Will Milwaukee need any of those games? I don't know. They've got a 3-game lead on the Philadelphia Phillies when we're talking about best record in baseball. So maybe not. That's a tough break there for the New York Mets. For the Mets, they're going to go to Chicago and play the Cubs and then go to Miami and play the Marlins. Here's the issue. All road games. Mets on the road, not the same team. 31-44 this year outside of Citi Field. It feels like the Reds are going to crash the party, but it's also felt like that before. But this is, when we're talking market movement, Major League Baseball went wild this weekend. Absolutely berserk. And rightfully so. We will see where it all lands. But let's get over to the chaos that was. Did you have the Rams? I'm sorry. Did you have the Packers right there with you? Maybe we deserved it. Let's figure out what Tom Vecchio had next.
look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Back right here, it's Game Time Decisions. Kevin Walsh with you on a Monday night. Tomorrow, Kevin's 7. Might be 7 biggest wheels. Might be that whole team back there. Well, I don't know. We're just having a little bit of fun. Should we re-rack the primetime producer parlay? So I saw from the below such a comment. Might be a winner. Features the under 54.5. Rashad Bateman, 3 catches. Gibbs into the end zone. That's a plus 575 for the boys in the back. I wonder if any of that speaks to our next guest. It's one and only Tom Vecchio. You can catch him here across the SportsGrid network. Does a lot for us and does it all well. Tom, how we feeling? What do we like? It's a Monday night.
I'm doing well, and certainly looking towards the under tonight, and that may surprise some people with these offenses. But we're dealing with a high number. And if I told you this game, and I will say I do like the lines tonight. The line has come down, but if I told you this game ended either way, 28-24, we're talking about 7 touchdowns there, and that doesn't even get us to the number. It gets us really close to the number, but it doesn't get us there. So, 54, 53 and a half, whatever it might be, I think the under may be the play. And I think, as I often say, is, you give me a live over or something in the lower 40s, I'll be very interested in a live over.
I will not, as I will just be happy and smiling and hope no one scores, Tom. I'm all about this under tonight. I did play 50. How sometimes you're like 54 and a half. It moved my way. I'll bet it again. 54. It's the opposite. I bet 53 and a half. Went to 54. Said fine. Let's do it again. Went to 54 and a half. I went. You know what? Fine. So I have 3 different bets on this total tonight. We're playing it to the under. I feel good about it. Here's the thing. I feel safe saying this. People say famous last words. All right, try me. Even if I lose this bet, won't be as bad as what happened to people who had Rams plus 3.5. I'm curious, Tom, what your takeaway was from Eagles-Rams yesterday, which I think gave us a lot to chew on.
I did not have the Rams. I think I had them in our pick'em pool, but I didn't actually bet on them. My takeaway from that was, what were they doing in the first 2.5 games? And then what was the speech and or adjustments made at halftime? They're like, hey, we have this top 10 receiver in the league. We should actually try to get him the ball. Oh, hang on. Oh, that works. Oh, we should actually do it again and again. And we have this button, and let's just keep pressing it until no one can stop us. and just give A.J. Brown the ball. It's like, what was going on in the first 2 weeks? And we spoke about this last week, and I said there may be a scenario of the Eagles, and we may never know this answer, that they were trying to do something different. They were trying to experiment to see what the capabilities of the offense were outside of the core players, because they had success last year. And let's try and add a wrinkle to the offense, because if we add that wrinkle, then the ceiling is that much higher. But that didn't work. So they changed things, and it did work in the second half. It was the best 2 quarters of football they've played this entire year, and that's obviously a small sample size, but it's true.
Yeah, so I think there's so much from in the game. I will just say, if you had the Rams plus 3.5, right? I know it's gonna be tough to dust yourself off, right? Like, that was the right side of that game. You covered from, within the first quarter until that moment. You capped it well. I know that that's probably not what you want to hear or care about, but you did. You did. And you're hearing it from an Eagle fan, but you knew that. Most unbiased fan history of sports media, you're probably not surprised. But from betting the Eagles, Tom, right, it is odd. Because not only, you're right to, hey, we have A.J. Brown, we have Devonta Smith. We have Jalen Hurts. The Super Bowl MVP. Let's play football here. I think Philly becomes a fascinating watch now next couple of weeks. We'll see if Lane Johnson misses the game in Tampa Bay. But does this team start to open it up a little bit is important. Speaking of Tampa Bay, they nearly lost on a blocked field goal. Instead, your guy, new offensive rookie of the year favorite, just makes play after play after play and might have to make even more if they're going to win next Sunday against Philadelphia with a Mike Evans injury. Bucs get another win, and a lot of that to do with Emeka Egbuka being an incredible rookie.
He is, as Mike Evans goes down, there's obviously reports that Chris Godwin will be on his way back. I think there's a sneaky role for Sterling Shepard moving forward. Kate Otten should continue to play a role, but, I'm not going to say I was right about Egbuka 3 weeks into the season when there's so much left in front of us, but he has looked awesome. If this is a loss for the Bucs, I would not consider this a bad loss. It's just a scheduled loss. They're dealing with injuries. The offensive line is beyond banged up, and they're playing a team that is factually better than them, and I just don't see a real path for the Bucs to win this game.
What do you make Tom of Emeka in the Offensive Rookie of the Year award? And let me do this for you. I know you will never bet him at under 4-1, ever having missed out on all these other preseason numbers, but evaluating the race right now, current prices, what is standing out to you? Because there's a lot of rookies. Quinshon Judkins, Cam Skattebo, Amarian Hampton, who had big weekends to shift their numbers.
Yeah. Skattebo's at least interesting from a volume perspective, but, Jackson Dart is also sitting there at 15-1, and, with the reports today, they're like, oh, they're not committing to a quarterback. If Jackson Dart brings them to at least a respectable level, they're horrible right now, right? But let's say he powers them to 6 wins, 5 wins, whatever it is. There's going to be the raw stats and the change to winning that will draw headlines and then draw some amount of attention. The same can be said about Amarian Hampton when he's going to be taking the volume of the role. But really, I don't see Justin Herbert being the MVP conversation, which he should be, and then them also having a Rookie of the Year. There's just not enough touches to go around when it's all said and done. Tyler Warren is interesting, though, because now you have a team that's exceeding expectations. He's being such a consistent role in that offense. At 5-1, I think it's a fair price right now. Obviously, I wish I had it beforehand, but I do think it is a reasonable spot to look.
So I feel what I feel strongest about right now is I think Cam Ward is absolutely done in this race, and I think Genty is knocking on the door of the same status. You're not winning this award because you play quarterback means your team won games. Again, I do this all the time. I'm not being hard on Jaden Daniels. Bowers was an all-pro. He probably deserved it, but Jaden plays quarterback. And if you want to say that's harder, fine. The Titans are terrible. Cam Ward's done. The Raiders can't block. Genty's great. The Raiders, Tom, you can ball yards before contact. They're basically starting behind the line of scrimmage, these guys. It's insane.
It really is. And, this is one of the things that we'll look back on in 3 years and be like, it wasn't his fault. Like he didn't win it. It literally wasn't his fault. And if they make improvements, they sign this, they draft, whomever in the years moving forward, like, wow, he probably could have had. And, at the end of the season, we'll look at, yards, rushing yards under expectation or over expectation. He's going to be at a negative number by a massive amount. You're telling me he could have had an extra 500 yards or whatever the number is because the offensive line is terrible? Very clear possibility, but I do think he is falling steps behind the race, as you said, with Cam Ward.
Yeah, I think it's a fun one. I would say, like, if you wanted a long shot that stood out to me, Tom, I'll ask you about this, and then we'll get you out of here. We'll check in throughout the week, of course. Matt Golden at 45. He is someone who I feel clearly is just going to get more and more work as the season goes on. Finally hit one of those big passes against Cleveland. Yeah. I know they lost the game, but if you want to go down the board, I don't mind Golden at 4. Like, Golden's the same number as Dylan Gabriel. I'd much rather Matthew Golden.
Yeah, 65-1.
You think he takes over the backfield?
They win the division. It's at least it's a conversation piece, and he takes it over. Big stats, something to talk about.
I'll tell you what, the Houston Texans are not winning that division. Tom, always great to check in. Again, we will absolutely likely target player prompts on Wednesday. Talk to our guy, Tom Vecchio. We talked a little bit. All right, Game Time Decision. We're back in right here. We're on SportsGrid.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
They have Boise State, they have Arkansas, they have USC. There's no shot in Purdue. Those are the only big games that they have the rest of the way. They're not getting back into the college football playoff. They're not, Donnie. I don't care if they've won 10 straight.
Remember when they lost to NIU? No way, no care. What happens the rest of the season? They can't get in. Who was in the college football championship last year?
But they had marquee wins at some point.
I don't care. They lost to NIU.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
I needed a mental break when the season was over. Like, because it's a lot. It's a lot. You get tired of training. But, man, I never get tired of playing golf. I love it. I mean, every course is different. Every day is different. And like, some days you're like, oh, I got this. I got it. Then you go out there and shoot a 95 the next day. I'm like, damn.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time Decisions with you right here on a Monday night, getting closer and closer to Monday Night Football, where we're going to have an AFC North team and an NFC North team. What craziness can happen? My, oh, my. Matt Fontana joins us, does an excellent job covering all things Cleveland sports. Matt, I told you, we got to stop meeting like this. I don't know. Maybe we'll just never have a normal conversation around Cleveland sports. I knew we'd talk in season. I figure All right, it's Gabriel time. It's Shador time. Nope, it's winning time. As a 7.5-point dog against the Green Bay Packers, what's the reaction in Cleveland to that win?
I mean, a little shock because there's nothing else you can be after that.
Yep.
The gift that Jordan Love gave you at the end, you had some bad penalties from the Packers. And, like, we all have to be realistic. The Packers lost that game. Yes, the Browns took advantage. And, yes, the defense was out of their minds and they held them to, just barely scoring anything, right? They kept Josh Jacobs out of the end zone. All these things, right? I'm not trying to take it away from the Browns, but the Packers made a lot of mistakes. And if you're a Packers fan, you're sitting there going, how did that happen? So Browns took advantage of it. They were timely. Even the last drive of spiking the football to get time for the kickoff was a miracle in its own right. So a lot of things went their way. I don't want to say it's due because I firmly believe you have to do good things to deserve breaks in sports, and the Browns really don't do that all that often. But breaks fell their way. Somehow the gods finally smiled down. They get a win. They calm people down. But, the reality was Joe Flacco did not play well in that game for the vast majority of it. Showed up when they needed to. But a win is a win. They don't ask how it happens necessarily. It's just a win in the win column.
My biggest takeaway, though, Matt, I think from the game, at least on the Cleveland side, and I think you'll agree with this, Myles Garrett should be the Defensive Player of the Year favorite. I initially thought he didn't have much of a chance because I didn't think the Browns were going to win games. I don't care if they don't win another game. If he plays like this, that's the Defensive Player there. We all know he's the best defensive player in the world. I don't see why he wouldn't be the betting favorite when it's Micah Parsons, who just played in that same game.
Well, and when Micah Parsons before the game fully admitted that Myles is a step ahead of him, right? Like when they asked about the two of them and the comparisons between the two, Micah straight up was like, yeah, I agree with Micah. I do think Micah and Myles are now in their own little category. I used to put TJ Watt up there, but I would say Pittsburgh more as a defense, and especially what they did this past weekend was really impressive with all the fumbles. Thank Ramondre Stevenson for that. But I used to think it was those three. Now I do think it is just Micah and Myles, with Myles being a step ahead of him. So, yes, when you think about that being the premier position, like I'm glad Pat Surtain won it again, or, won it last year. You're not going to see a DB win it again, I don't think, for a little while. It's going to go back to the pass rushers. Nick Bosa's done for the year. Who knows with Watt? I've been a Trey Hendrickson critic. I think with everything going on in Cincinnati, they're going to be in a world of trouble down there. So I agree with you 100%. I'm sure the line has shifted. Myles was one of the favorites at plus money. I would say within a couple of weeks, if he keeps doing what he's doing, it's going to be at that minus money. I just don't know anybody realistically that can push him other than Micah. And again, I don't want to say the injury word. Those certainly play a factor in it, but I think it is Myles to lose for sure.
I'll ask you this one last thing on the Browns, and I'll mention some Guardians because, again, of course, they're somehow still relevant coming down the end of September. Nobody knew what was going to go on with Quinshon Judkins, and maybe we still don't know what's really going to happen with Quinshon Judkins, but what seems to be clear, really good at football. What are you hearing around the Browns running back, and what have you seeing? Because he's been impressive through 2 games.
100%. And I'm shocked that there was not additional games added to that. The NFL, I would assume there's no way they can go back and retroactively suspend him now. Case closed. He sat the 1 game. That must have been enough for the NFL. But I think the biggest thing for Judkins, the biggest comparison was Travion Henderson, his Ohio State teammate. They were both there for the Browns to pick. I was screaming for Henderson. Some people told me the Browns didn't like Henderson's injury history. They go with Judkins, and especially with the zone scheme the Browns are trying to run, he seems to have the vision for it. He hits that hole. He's got the speed. He's got the power, but he really has a vision, I think, is the biggest thing that I see. It's kind of reminiscent of Nick Chubb in a way. Nick had one of the best visions of any running back, and especially when you scheme it up with the Browns offense, when it's really clicking, when the offensive line, who's completely in shambles for the Browns right now, when that offensive line is good, when they're running that zone scheme, you need a running back with vision, and Judkins has shown that through 2 games so far.
So to the Guardians, who are now 84-72, and that is good enough to have them with, right now, due to tiebreakers, the final wild card spot. And you would have, again, I would have thought, hey, beggars can't be choosers. Awesome. This team has their eyes on this division. Detroit's been collapsing. The Guardians have been red hot, Matt. I mean, does this team feel like they're going to close in on Detroit and really make some noise here?
Hey, better. You can't come this far and not finish this out. Like, come on.
Right.
Like, to do all this, no team in baseball history has ever come back from 15 and a half games down at any point of the season to win the division. Guardians have a chance to be the first. And, the crazy stat I saw today was, I think it was in the last 28 games played, the Guardians have given up 28 runs. That's how you're going to win. And that's how they have to win is 3-1, 2-0 type of games. And yeah, it was insane. And I think the list, the next closest team had given up 60, and the Guardians had given up 28. So, did they play some anemic offenses at that point? Sure. Do I think they have Detroit's number? Absolutely. I think it's Joe Burrow just can't play against Myles Garrett. That's like Detroit when they play Cleveland. They just can't play them for some reason. So they're running them down. It's great to see. The pitching has been good. They've gotten timely hitting, and they get contributions from some no-name guys in that lineup. It's fun. They better win the division.
That is a 28-28 is an outrageous stat. Do you see, Matt, just quickly before we let you go, if they're in the dance, does it feel like they can, at that point, why not? Why not us type of thing?
Why not? If the pitching's going to be as hot as they've been, you get the timely hitting. We've seen wild card teams make runs to the World Series, and again, even if they win the division, they'll have that wild card feel. Why not us?
Why not? If no one can score on you, then it's almost definitely going to be Matt Fontana, host of the Matt Fontana Show. Always, always great checking in, Matt. I'm sure we'll do it again soon. I just have no idea why.
Cavs will start, so there'll be some crazy thing about the Cavs next time.
Hey, remember when LeBron was going to get traded? I was trying to push LeBron to Cleveland so hard, I gave up on that. Maybe I need to restart that cavalry. Let's get it going, baby. LeBron back in Cleveland. Why not? We'll be right back. Game Time Decision.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scottaboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
We're with you right here on SportsGrid. It's Game Time Decisions. Happy to have you in the mix on this Monday. And I almost just want to try and do a little roundup, if we may, all right, on all the things that are happening. Quickly, the WNBA playoffs this weekend. The Lynx start 1-0, handle business. They're almost minus 300. A big reason for that big move was not just the 13-point win. It was the Aces getting absolutely rocked by the Fever. Those 4 teams are all in action tomorrow. I will tell you now, unless the number is way out of whack, Aja Wilson's points prop will be a best bet, as she finally had an inefficient game this postseason, and that looks like a clear and obvious bounce-back spot. If you're on the Major League Baseball board, the Nats just made it a Yurfie in their game against Atlanta. We have a Padres-Brewers game where AJ's on a best bet to the under with Pivetta and Peralta. And then you've got the Giants and the Cardinals with Verlander as a favorite against St. Louis. College football world, a number of results this weekend that mattered. None more than Indiana, Illinois. That isn't even really debatable. Indiana beat a top 10 ranked team. Now, Illinois is not one of the 10 best teams in college football. They're lucky to be seen as one of the 25 best teams in college football. They're a good team, though, okay? But they beat them 63-10. This gives Indiana a ton of runway now within their schedule. They have a trip to Oregon and Penn State. They can lose both. They need to hang in one of them. If they handle business outside of that, the Hoosiers probably punched a ticket to the playoff. It's plus 184 right now. Maybe tomorrow we'll talk some more playoff prices. It's tempting. If IU is in the playoff, that could be a boost to the new Heisman favorites case. Fernando Mendoza was ripping touchdown passes in that game. Plus, run-it-up Signetti was letting him rip touchdown passes in all the other games. He's got 14 through 4 games. He didn't even throw a touchdown pass in week 1 against ODU. He has 16 total touchdowns. Fernando Mendoza is the Heisman Trophy favorite, slightly in front of John Mateer of Oklahoma, who got a ranked victory on the other side against Auburn. Again, we'll reset a lot of that college football stuff for you tomorrow. What else happened in the NFL? There's so many bullets flying. We haven't been able to really address all of it here. So almost, if you will, just like a roundup, things that we were tracking. And one of them was, would the Jaguars bury the Houston Texans? Yup. Indy's the favorite in the division. Understandably, they're not just 3-0. They've been impressive. But it's a favored Texans team now being better than 7-1 when you look for their division price. If you still believe in Houston, probably more so if you don't believe in Jacksonville and Indianapolis, you're getting a big-time number. As somebody who thought the Texans punting on offensive line were going to have to pay a price for that, I will not be interested in any of their numbers because they are kind of getting what they deserve. The Chargers flip above minus 150 now in the AFC West due to a comeback victory at home against the Broncos. I do think they showed some cracks in that game. I think the Chargers being 3-0 and then 3-0 in division give them the rightful spot atop this division. But as far as big-time stuff, right, whether we're talking AFC or Super Bowl, down 7 at home to the Denver Broncos, who I think have looked pretty awful, with late into the fourth quarter, that's not my favorite thing I've ever seen from a team. Also, listen, we have spots where we're right and spots where we're wrong. But one thing I know for sure that I am right about, and it wasn't even something that I bet on, but it was something that I said, which was if the Cincinnati Bengals are serious, they cannot have Jake Browning be their quarterback for 3 or 4 months. And again, that 3-month Joe Burrow timeline, that might be way too optimistic, okay? We're going to talk to the Pro Football Doc. Still means Jake Browning starting 12 games at a minimum. Jake Browning now, okay, has thrown 5 interceptions. He's played like a game and a half. He is not an NFL starting quarterback. This is one of the most talented teams. Elite. He's standalone. No one else has thrown more than 5. He is one of the most talented offenses we know. I think it's a talented roster. Kirk Cousins, that's too expensive. The Giants are going to bench Russell Wilson maybe within the next 24 hours. If you put Russ on Cincinnati, they can play 500 football and give themselves a chance when Joe Burrow gets back. We get back to tonight's slate with our guy Rob Donaldson. Let's see what he's got cooking up on a Monday night next.
look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Live to right here on SportsGrid. Update right now in the market, 4.5 everywhere. That 5 is gone, so a little bit of Detroit bets kind of pushed this number back down. We are 54 more than we are 53.5. I'll lose 54.5, still sits out there. Let's talk about tonight's slate with our guy, Rob Donaldson. Rob, it is always great to talk. Rob does it all, man. Baseball, NFL, college football. So we'll maybe talk all of it here in the time that we have. I'll start Ravens-Lions, though, Rob. What do you make about the Week 3 closeout?
Yeah, it's a really fun game that we're getting on a Week 3 closeout, right? And I think ultimately we're going to learn a lot about both teams tonight because although the Ravens have already kind of played, the Buffalo Bills, and it was a really fantastic matchup, sometimes in Week 1, you just get that weirdness or that almost quote-unquote ring rust of players trying to figure out themselves once again. And now, coming off a game against the Browns for the Ravens that I thought was a lot more physical, and again, the Browns defense showed up this past weekend as well. I think the Ravens offense is going to get back into form, kind of like what they were running in Week 1, and I think it's going to be behind Derrick Henry, who kind of had a slow game last weekend. So I'm targeting some early lines of Ravens first half, minus the 2.5, and also Derrick Henry getting those rush yards over 84.5. I think both of those are going to be some really home run spots.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun to watch both of these backs work here. The defenses aren't perfectly healthy, and I know that despite betting the under. I think the number is just a tick too tall. Rob, did anything really stand out to you, though, from this Sunday slate here? I mean, we know it was chaos, right? There's blocked field goal. Well, I think someone just blocked another. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous to watch that whole thing play out. Were you involved in any of those? What stood out to you?
Oh, man, was I. I was involved in the big one. I had Rams plus 3.5, and that was just the one that just sinks your heart when it happens. I also had Arizona Cardinals money line, and obviously that game ended on a field goal, not with the Arizona Cardinals winning it on that field goal. So, yeah, I think we learned a lot of different things. Some teams have kickers, some teams don't. If you're the Falcons, you don't have you don't have a kicker times 2. And so, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of things you can take away. But ultimately, we are still really, really green, still really, really young into the season. And although the Indianapolis Colts look like they're the best offense in football, don't be surprised if, in just 1 week, everything kind of turns against them.
Yeah, listen, we know how these things tend to go. Daniel Jones, hot as can be so far, yet there is still some resistance to Colts love in the market. They've had to shift them a little bit, right? Divisional favorites. Some of that, though, can just be the nature of the AFC South. I'll stick football for a second here, Rob. I know you're always into the college football slate. I'm just wondering, are you loaded up anywhere, national title or Heisman market? Do you have a team preseason, in season?
Well, my big team coming into the year was Texas A&M in terms of kind of like that middle to long shot-esque market. And, that win against Notre Dame, I think, one, showed a lot of their weaknesses and also showed that, hey, if you can win some of those kind of resilient type of games and stick around with that undefeated record for as long as possible, heck yeah, you're going to be in the dance. Teams like Illinois are already getting kind of bludgeoned out of the mix in a way. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of big games coming up this weekend where some almost double-digit favorites are going to end up dropping. And I think when you are holding on to one of those teams that doesn't have one of those big games like a Texas A&M or maybe an Oklahoma who just got over a big hurdle, basically two of the last three games, I think you're sitting in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, for me, I talk about this. I bet Clemson. The second my hand was off the chess piece, felt sick to my stomach, and I hate that team. I'm almost good. I'm almost glad. I feel bad for anybody who bet Clemson because of me. Aside from that, good. They're terrible. Like, they're awful. I also played some Ole Miss, Rob. Really important spot this week against LSU. If they get this win, they get a bye week and then Washington State. That would set them up to likely be, if my math is right, 6-0 before Georgia. The Rebs got a real shot at flipping a minus money to make the CFP. I'm wondering your early read on them or even LSU, who now, what's their big achievement? Well, beating Clemson. In a way, that looks worse because Syracuse looked much better against Clemson.
Yeah, and heck, if you think about that game against Clemson, right, they had to come back. I mean, obviously, the final score ended up being, a two-possession game, but they were trailing for about 3.5 quarters, roughly speaking, or maybe 3.25. And yeah, also that game against Florida, DJ Lagway threw 5 picks and Florida was in that game. So I do think we have to kind of pump the brakes on LSU just being in that immediate title conversation. And to your point about Ole Miss, I think this is going to be a massive prove-it game because obviously Austin Simmons almost got Drew Bledsoe'd in a way last week, it felt like, by Chambliss. And now they have these two quarterbacks that we have to figure out what they're going to do with. And although both of them are very talented, sometimes that can kind of mess with the flow of an offense that I think can be in kind of that humming state in a lot of different games. So I think you have some really good equity with Ole Miss, but obviously this weekend is kind of that big turning point for you.
Yeah, listen, it is, and we'll be trying to root it in as much as we can. Major League Baseball-wise, quiet night, Rob. Did any of the 3 games stand out to you?
Yeah, notably, I think the Brewers stood out because I think Freddie Peralta is one of the most disrespected pitchers on the market who's pitching like a legitimate ace. I would say if you're making a top 5 pitcher list in baseball as they're playing right now, Freddie Peralta is actually making that top 3 of the top 5. And also, when you're looking at the market coming into tonight, plus 110 is where I got the Brewers on the money line. Now they're actually the favorite at minus 110 roughly in some places. And Nick Pivetta on the other side is just not a pitcher that, as of late, you've been really wanting to back, giving up a lot of hard contact, giving up a lot of runs, and not getting a lot of run support. So I think the Brewers end up getting that done on the money line here tonight.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. Our guy AJ in the back's playing this one to the under. We'll see if it comes in. We're about to hit the stretch run here, Rob, as far as Major League Baseball goes. And look, I'm sure your eyes, are always on the slate, but I'm sure there are some of the viewers here who kind of went back, checked the records, and like, wait, the Astros got swept at home, and the Mariners are the American League favorites now. Like, I'm sure some people were like, wait, the Mets collapse that's been happening for 3 months finally happened, and the Reds have now overtaken them. Is there something within these races that has really stood out to you?
Yeah, I look at the Detroit Tigers, man, and I'm just like, how did we end up here? Because this is a team that's playing worse than the Rockies right now. They are bad news. And I think Tariq Skubal and his starts kind of getting mixed in there are great, but what happens if they have to burn him just to make the playoffs and then they have to use whoever else in the wild card game? I think they're going to be in a really rough spot come, the actual playoff cycle, and leading up to it, they're not playing good enough baseball to win against anybody. So yeah, that's a really big fall for grace from a team that was up like 15 games and just the overall standings.
Yeah, it's one of those that you're like, no way. But the races are so tight. Like, if you say, hey, Detroit blew the division, they might miss the playoffs. They've been American League favorites for like 3-4 months. So it goes to show just how crazy this stretch run is going to be. In case I skipped over it, Rob, Giants-Cardinals, you're involved in that one too?
Yes, I'm on the under of a flat 8. Right now, you're probably finding 7.5 at a more reasonable odds number. But if you can still find that flat 8, I love the full game. If not, first 5, under 4.5 or under a flat 4. I think McGreevy's been pitching a lot better as of late. And Verlander, shout out to Justin Verlander, who's kind of had almost a back-end resurrection here because he's balling out. I really do think both pitchers are going to be able to limit the opposing offense through about 5 or 7.
Looks like there's still a flat 8 hanging out there as well. If you want to swim in that river, you should be able to find it. Rob, we appreciate it as always, man. There's the action for the Monday Nighter as well. A little bit of love for Derrick Henry and the Baltimore Ravens. Rob Donaldson, we appreciate it. Best of luck on this slate. We've got the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, joining us next right here on SportsGrid.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scatterboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on a Monday night, Kevin Walsh with you, working on getting the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow in, so we can get some insight to some of these injuries here around the National Football League, and there were a ton. The one that impacts my bets the most, and if you are following along, we lost our DPOY pick in Nick Bosa. Now, that's obviously really unfortunate because Bosa was going to, I think, have a real chance at it. I do. He had the third best odds immediately after week number 1, Parsons and Garrett are going to be hard to beat, but I was happy about the position. It's not what you're looking for. I think the thing for Bosa, though, is his injury. Obviously, it immediately, the DPOY tickets. But this Niners team now, it's just stacking guy after guy after guy. And it makes it very, very difficult to trust that team in the futures market. I played them as well within the NFC. And they're not out of it. They're 3-0. There's a very injured football team that goes beyond losing Bosa for the year. Of course, Kittle's still injured. Juwan Jennings, Brock Purdy. These are guys that we're talking about week to week. Luckily, though, someone to help us through the craziness is the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, who joins us right now on Game Time Decisions. Again, SixScore.com. We'll get you up to date on everything. Doc, a very busy day for you and the team yesterday. Let's just start with San Francisco. Bosa announced done for the year. And this team dealing still with a ton of injuries beyond Nick.
San Francisco was among the 2 most injured teams in the league last year, and it's not a good start, right? Obviously, Brock Purdy, Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, offensive lineman, now Nick Bosa. I mean, it's not been great for the 49ers, unfortunately. And this is a re-tear of the same left knee that Joey Bosa tore before. I think it was 2020.
Yeah, it's a spot, Doc, now where these Niners futures that anybody has, at least they're 3-0. There's some early positivity for Brock Purdy. Maybe, I know you guys have said it, at some point, Juwan Jennings. Do you have an early outlook for the Niners next week?
Well, and of course, they're still missing Brandon Ayuk right now, right? And he's still coming back from last year's ACL. Brock Purdy is about ready to go. He was close last week. And with news from Ian Rappaport that Mac Jones may have aggravated a PCL injury, it may be Brock Purdy time. It's not George Kittle time yet. That's not good, but it may be Brock Purdy time this week, given the situation. Juwan Jennings getting closer. Brandon Ayuk, not quite yet.
Doc, a couple of wide receivers making headlines, none bigger likely than CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. Didn't get to play much of any of that game, really. Did try to go back out there. We saw, I'm sure that video maybe told you guys everything you needed to know over at SixScore.com. What's the outlook for Dallas's wide receiver?
Well, here's the thing. The good news is it's not surgical. The bad news is it's going to be a few weeks at least. It's a high ankle sprain variant, more of a medial sprain than truly high. That's why he was able to be taped and give it a go, but it didn't really last. And at this point, he certainly is out this week, likely a little bit beyond. The hope, fingers crossed, is he can stay shy of a 4-week short-term IR. That's the fingers crossed hope, but not guarantee at this point in time.
Doc, the Mike Evans injury happened very late in that football game. I wonder if for you guys, almost a level of deja vu, Mike Evans and a hamstring injury, what would be your early diagnosis for the Bucs superstar?
Well, word is it's a low grade. It's not that bad. But the only hamstring injuries in wide receivers that aren't that bad are the ones to your opposition, right? I mean, especially a downfield guy, speed guy, who's also getting a little older. This is going to be a deal. The bad news is it's a big deal for a wide receiver. It's going to hamper him at least a few weeks. I think he's likely going to miss this week, at least, even with it being low grade. But let me tell you something. Mike Evans is a beast. He's had a history of trying to play through hamstring injuries. I remember a few years ago, we looked at a hamstring injury and we said, there's no way he plays week 1. There's no way he plays. And indeed, he played. And his stat line, he was a decoy. His stat line was 1 catch, 2 yards for a touchdown. So fantasy people were mad at me.
But that is Mike Evans, though, Doc. They got to give you a break on that one. What an incredible football player. Let me, if I can, just quickly, Doc. Any clarity on Lane Johnson? It's going to be Bucs Eagles this weekend. That seemed to be a little bit of an odd one for Philadelphia.
Well, I believe it's a stinger, so it is neck related, but it's not a herniated disc. So stinger's better than herniated disc.
Yeah.
The good news is it's not surgical. He's got a really good chance to play this week. The bad news is it can re-aggravate. Don't be surprised if you see him with a collar as he's out there. Some linemen don't like wearing the collars, the head swivel and the turn, it restricts them. But that would give him a level of safety. But I do expect him to be out there this week for Philadelphia.
Okay, Doc, again, Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, SixScore.com for all of this information. But since we have you here, Doc, I might as well ask you about the Monday night game between Baltimore and Detroit. Looking at the field view, pretty even teams whose injuries seem to be more on defense than offense.
That's right. Both teams index higher on the offensive side of the ball than the defensive side of the ball. Of course, Baltimore has defensive back issues, Jair Alexander, et cetera. And the big one is up the middle, Nnamdi Madubuike, with this mysterious neck issue. There's some worry there that may be a cervical disc herniation, and it may be a lot longer. This is a little different situation than Lane Johnson's. That obviously is going to affect him in the run game today, but for Baltimore going forward, that may be one of their bigger concerns.
All right, certainly something then that we're going to have to keep our eye on tonight. The Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow. Doc, we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, again, SixScore.com, everything you need. Because, unfortunately, what we just saw this weekend, possibly a sign of things to come. It is football, after all. We'll get you the best bets on the way out.
Look at the weather, try to look for some anytime touchdowns or maybe some props that you really feel confident about. But it's always the time for urgency, especially for a team like the New York Giants. I think that defense is something that can give Giants fans hope. And then if you get Dart under center, it's hope. And then if you can get Scottaboo out there and the whole building's going boo, it's hope. And as we know, hope works.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're in the Super Bowl market, if you're in the futures market, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is heavily connected to the Kansas City Chiefs. I am sure it would be Tyreek's first place if he could pick to go back to. At least I would think it would be. And the Chiefs have a need, and the Chiefs are interested, and they're not worried about any of his other question marks.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Pick sizzles and all the in-between, baby. It's game time decisions. We're closing it out on a Monday night. Don't you forget it is in-game live with Gabriel Morency and Scott Wetzel. Next right here on SportsGrid, who will have you covered for a Monday nighter between the Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit Lions. Let's take a look at where this line is, and has it moved at all since we began? 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4. It's all 4.5, really. Maybe 1.5. 54, 53 and a half. That's 54 and a half's looked on, though, okay? Props tonight. I mentioned some of that, like, reverse work around it stuff. If you made me, like, I shouldn't even do this because I'm not really getting involved. I think Montgomery could be sneaky. They still like to use David Montgomery. I think there's going to be a lot of running in this football game. All in all, I really do. Outdoors golf, a little bit different. It all leads to my best bet, which is the under 54 and a half. I think it's just a great spot to double sell high. Two offenses that are off to two great starts here. Detroit last week scores 52. We go back to last season. They scored 50 twice. In each of the next games, they scored 24 total points in bang unders. Baltimore, 40-plus in the first two games of the season. Ravens last year scored 40-plus 3 total times. They now done it 2 for 2 to start the year. You go back to Lamar's MVP season. They scored 40 in back-to-back games. The next game, 27. You go then the next year, they scored 40 in back-to-back games. The next game, 24. 27-24 doesn't surprise. That's an under. And at 54.5, that's an under by a field goal. So I think that this is a total that's too high. This is a game I was looking to bet under at 51.5. When it opened, I said, we'll wait. We're not rushing. I don't bet many openers. I will say there are a few spreads that have caught my eye. We'll talk about those tomorrow with Brady Cannon. Of course, Kevin Seven will see. I may get pushed to the market a little bit earlier than I want. But right now, under 54.5, Ravens, Lions. And again, if you can only get 54, I also bet 54. And if you can only get 53.5, I also bet 53.5. So trust me, I like it at any number. Chris's best bet's going to be Derrick Henry into the end zone and a Jameson Williams 40-plus yard day. J-Mo had a big day last week against the Bears. Of course, the thought for J-Mo is the one-catch special. I'm sure many will be using Jameson Williams in the king of the end zone market that DK is using for the long touchdown. Something to keep your eyes on then potentially for that market. I sprinkled on Zay Flowers if you are curious. Sam's going to go for a Derrick Henry long rush, 17 and a half. King Henry having the long touchdown wouldn't surprise anyone, but he's over minus 200 to score. That's going to be his play. Baseball board for AJ, that's an under 7. Padres, Brewers, Peralta, Pivetta. He was saying he needs a couple of strikeouts from Freddie P in that game, so don't be scared to root those in. A primetime producer parlay. I like where they're going with this. Gibbs for a touchdown. Bateman for 2.5 catches over. Under the 54.5. Like, I think that stuff all works in unison. 54.5 gives you a lot of breathing room. Again, like I said, 27-24 is not a low-scoring football game. Right? That would have been over the number in the Bears and the Cowboys. Right? So there's room for props to hit while keeping this game under the listed total, and that is what I am expecting. That is what I am going to be rooting on. And I will add, and I would just also let people know, these two teams next week, primetime games can shift numbers, okay? Detroit is hosting Cleveland, 8.5, mostly. If the Ravens route and roll, could we get Lions at -7? I'd be interested. I would be interested at Lions at -7. I would be. I don't think it's likely, but again, if the Ravens route and roll. If the Ravens route and roll, they next week play in probably the biggest game of the week with respect to Packers-Cowboys against the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. Now, Baltimore being favored in that game was always a certainty. We knew that was going to happen. -3 in some spots. I'll check in on it right now. And I know we're going to do a lot of this tomorrow with Brady, but, we got to lock in, be early to make sure we know what's what. And those 3s are still out there, at least in one major spot. FanDuel has a 3, okay? If the Ravens roll, I can't imagine it's a 3.5, but it's probably going to be 3 everywhere. If this is an upset, that number can kind of wrap back around. So that's the value of a primetime game like this where all eyes are going to be on it between two really good teams. One of these teams is going to fall to 1 and 2. So there's a lot on the line. We're playing this under. We are playing it at 54.5. Big show tomorrow. Kevin Seven, full baseball board, playoff race starts, the WNBA playoff slate. We'll talk to Brady about the Week 4 NFL spreads. Cannot wait for that. Can't wait to spend it with you. In-game live is next, right here on SportsGrid. There are right now